Hello friends, welcome to Star Explainer. Tales of Herding Gods Part 353 and 354 explains based on novel. So let's start explanation. Celestial Emperor Sister, what is her corpse doing here? Qin Mu's mind was a blank, he could barely believe his eyes. Celestial Empress corpse was hidden on the ghost ship. Qin Mu's experience on the ghost ship was so bizarre that he would never be able to forget it. To solve the mystery of the ghost ship, he had memorized every single detail of the ship and every cycle, so the memory of the ghost ship was abnormally vivid to him. On the ghost ship, Celestial Empress and Zhu Wuchen's corporeal bodies were both placed in the same coffin. Qin Mu had tried to summon Zhu Wuchen's soul and found out that Zhu Wuchen actually had no soul. She was a man-made beauty, a perfect woman that Celestial Venerable Ling had created using the technique of creation, to get rid of the ancient Celestial Emperor. Qin Mu then summoned Celestial Empress' soul only to shockingly find out that Celestial Empress wasn't dead, and that she was still in this world. After, he deduced the process of how Celestial Empress and her sister had joined forces with the Heaven Alliance to murder the ancient Celestial Emperor. The two sisters had joined forces. The younger sister remained in the celestial heavens to keep the ancient Celestial Emperor in check, while Celestial Empress went back to her hometown to visit her relatives. While there, she made use of the nearby Dragon Count country, allowing King Dragon Count to revolt and injure her, keeping her captive in the ruins of End. Celestial Emperor then ordered Wei Suifeng to lead the Feathered Forest Guards to suppress the rebellion. After rescuing Celestial Empress, the day before Wei Suifeng was set to return to the celestial heavens after quelling the rebellion, Celestial Empress was ambushed. The undercurrent spewed from the ruins of End, two Celestial Empresses appeared in the night, and the real Celestial Empress perished. Wei Suifeng retrieved the corpse of Celestial Empress and planned to return to the celestial heavens, when he encountered Celestial Venerable Ling executing her powers on the Celestial River. Wei Suifeng immediately used the fog to leave the Dragon Han era and return to his own era. Meanwhile, the Feathered Forest Guards and the ship, through Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art, became the ghost ship that would end up traveling through time and space 36 times in cycles. However, Celestial Empress wasn't dead. She had become Zhu Wuchen. The celestial heavens also announced that Celestial Empress hadn't perished. Qin Mu deduced that the Celestial Empress in the celestial heavens should be the younger sister of Celestial Empress. Following this deduction, Celestial Empress and her sister were both involved in the plan to kill Celestial Emperor. Yet, in front of him was the coffin of the younger sister of Celestial Empress, and her corpse was currently lying in the coffin. What if, back then, Celestial Empress' younger sister hadn't stayed behind in the celestial heavens to restrain Celestial Emperor, but had instead followed Celestial Empress to the ruins of End and instigated Dragon Count country to rebel? What if she then took the chance to get rid of her older sister, but was instead killed by Celestial Empress? The older sister then hid the younger sister's corpse within the ruins of End. After, she pretended to have been ambushed, perishing in the process. She then let Wei Suifeng take her corpse to the celestial heavens, using the ghost ship to escape and finally transforming herself into Zhu Wuchen. Wei Suifeng had then realized something was fishy, and that the one who had really died was the sister of Celestial Empress. Therefore, he left a map behind to guide Qin Mu to uncover the truth. However, this guess has a loophole. That is, why did the celestial heavens announce that Celestial Empress didn't die? Qin Mu composed himself and fell into deep thought. The Celestial Empress in the celestial heavens is definitely one of the sisters. Which of them is it exactly? Perhaps there's another possibility, that both sisters schemed together. The younger sister pretended to ambush the older sister, and killed her while everyone was watching. Then, the older sister faked her death and escaped, becoming Zhu Wuchen, while the younger sister returned to the celestial heavens to become the legitimate Celestial Empress. After the death of the ancient Celestial Emperor, Celestial Empress got rid of her younger sister, and sent her corpse here to bury the truth. That was until Wei Suifeng came here, and discovered the corpse of Celestial Empress sister. There are still areas that don't make sense. The corpses of the sisters, one is hidden in the ghost ship, and one is hidden in the ruins of End. So who are they now? Is there still a Celestial Empress in the celestial heavens? Or could it be that Celestial Empress didn't kill her sister, that instead, both sisters are sharing the same body while remaining in the celestial heavens to control the corporeal body of Celestial Emperor? Qin Mu felt that his brain was about to explode, and he yelled out abruptly, "Fatty dragon, get down here and open the coffin." The dragon Qilin trembled all over. He laid on the crystal coffin, and didn't dare to move an inch. Qin Mu raised his hand to lift both him and the crystal coffin up. He then threw it to the side and, immediately after, executed the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique. Behind Qin Mu, the Gate of Heaven influence emerged, yet what was peculiar was that the Gate of Heaven influence was extremely faint, it faded in and out of existence, and was completely unable to take shape. Qin Mu's brows furrowed. The ruins of End was extremely strange, it countered Yudu's divine arts, and he was unable to make use of the soul guide to check if Celestial Empress sister was dead or alive. Wei Suifeng left the corpse of Celestial Empress sister here as a precious artifact. Could it be that he wants me to take this corpse out of here? His brows furrowed deeper, and he paced around the coffin, as he looked at the corporeal body of Celestial Empress sister within it in silence. Must I really take this with me? Suddenly, a monstrous water sound traveled in from outside. Qin Mu was taken aback. He walked out of the Red Palace with quick steps and raised his head to look outwards. The sound of water came from the sky outside, but it didn't reach the world within the flower. The celestial river was cut off. So where is this water noise coming from? Qin Mu was stumped. Could it be? At this very moment, a dense fog drifted through the sky, entering the world within the flower through the gaps and gradually filling up the entire flower world. Yang was still fighting ferociously with the snake bell who was transformed from the stamens, and they faded in and out of visibility within the fog. After a moment, the dense fog dissipated, and the sound of water also vanished. Suddenly, an extremely loud sound could be heard, and the world within the flower trembled violently. Following this, Qin Mu sensed that the two giant flowers were slowing rising upwards. These two flowers are about to rise out from the ruins of End. Qin Mu's heart quivered slightly, and he immediately returned to the Red Palace, picking the dragon Qilin up and pulling him off of the coffin. Qin Mu covered up the crystal coffin. "Fatty dragon, stop shaking, I'll give you more meals. Hurry and call Sister Yang over. Let's leave this place while these two flowers are floating out of the abyss." The dragon Qilin was invigorated, and he immediately dashed out of the Red Palace and scanned around his surroundings, yelling, "Cult Master, the flower has opened up. Sister Yang and that ancient god have fought all the way into the dark world. It's too dark in there, I dare not enter. Add 2 meals." The dragon Qilin rushed into the dark world to search for Yang. Meanwhile, Qin Mu lifted up the crystal coffin and laughed. "I don't know what kind of tricks Celestial Empress and her sister are playing, but once I carry this coffin out of here, I will know whether she is dead or alive." Just as he walked out of the Red Palace, a middle-aged man walked towards him. The man was dressed in rough clothes, looking travel-worn. He had big limbs and thick brows with big eyes, and on his waist was a belt made of rough weaving. In front of him floated a sheet of goatskin paper that moved as he moved. Before the goatskin paper was a brush that was writing and drawing on the paper on its own, drafting out the topography of the world within the flower. The two of them faced each other and were both stunned. "Founding Master. Big Senior Brother." The coffin on Qin Mu's shoulder fell to the ground as he stared blankly at the middle-aged man before he stuttered, Wei Suifeng. Who are you? The middle-aged man was stunned, and his gaze turned to the crystal coffin on the ground. The coffin opened up, and a female corpse rolled out of it, her face facing downwards, revealing a hole in the back of her head with a peachwood hairpin sticking out of it. The middle-aged man was wary, and he immediately put away his goatskin scroll, brush, and ink. Who are you? How do you recognize me? What do you intend to do to this female corpse? Qin Mu's mind was a mess. The fog from just now, the sudden appearance of his big senior brother, Wei Suifeng, the peachwood hairpin in the back of the head of Celestial Empress Sister, this series of unexpected occurrences made him unable to straighten out his thoughts in a moment's time. The middle-aged man was really the founding master of the Heavenly Saint cult, Wei Suifeng. His portrait hung in the Heavenly Saint cult headquarters at Saint Arrival Mountain, and when each cult master underwent the experience of receiving their teachings from the sacred teacher on the rock, they would be shown the scene of Wei Suifeng listening to Saint Woodcutter's teachings. He definitely wouldn't have mistaken him for someone else. The sound of the water from just now, it was of the re-emergence of the celestial river. Then the fog burst out, and it caused this place to return to 20,000 years ago. Qin Mu's head was no longer jumbled up, so he instantly rationalized what was going on. Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art had made him travel back to 20,000 years ago. At this time, Wei Suifeng, in order to fulfill the three things required to become a saint, establish his cult, his ideas in writing, and establish his merit, he had started to search for the mysteries of the past and had thus come to the ruins of End. The peachwood hairpin behind the head of Celestial Empress Sister was there because the one who had killed her was Celestial Venerable Ling, and not Celestial Empress. It was Celestial Venerable Ling, who had hid the corpse of Celestial Empress Sister here. Why are you not saying anything? The middle-aged man was carrying different weapons on his back. Suddenly, his body shook, and all of the weapons fell to the ground noisily before they quickly reassembled. He stared at Qin Mu with caution. How do you recognize me? Are you someone who has been left here by the extraterritorial celestial heavens, or are you a tomb raider? His weapons were extremely peculiar. They were composed of various components that could be put together into different weapon forms at will. Qin Mu figured out the crucial point, and he smiled. Big senior brother, I am your second junior brother. We are both of the same sect and are both disciples of Saint Woodcutter. The middle-aged man reached his hand behind his back, and the freshly formed divine weapon immediately landed in his hand. He laughed coldly. You are my junior brother. Sacred teacher has never taken in any other disciples. Who exactly are you? The weapon in his hand resembled a bamboo hat, but it should be just one of its many forms. I am your junior brother from 20,000 years later. Qin Mu hurriedly continued, Teacher Woodcutter took me as his disciple 20,000 years from now. I am also the Heavenly Saint cult master, and we have 20,000 years between us. Did you encounter the dense fog just now? That fog is the reason why I have time-traveled 20,000 years into the past. I followed the geographical map that you left behind for me and found this place, this coffin, and the woman inside the coffin. These are all the truths of history that you left behind for me, which were waiting for me to uncover them. This woman is the younger sister of Celestial Empress of the extraterritorial celestial heavens. As he spoke, he couldn't continue speaking. These words, if he was in his shoes, he wouldn't believe them either. Because it was too absurd, too bizarre. Qin Mu sighed. Saying all of this, you must not believe me, right? Do you think I would believe you? The sneer on the middle-aged man's face grew deeper. Leave the coffin and the female corpse behind, and I can let you go. Qin Mu sighed again. Teacher said that you are very stubborn, that if you made up your mind about something, even a 9-headed bull wouldn't be able to move you, and no one would be able to make you change your mind. It seems that only if we fight, and after I defeat you will you accept that I am your junior brother? Though us three brothers of the same sect have never sparred with each other before. The middle-aged man was plain and simple in appearance, and upon hearing what he said, he replied, laughing, I still have a third junior brother. Coming to this evil land today, I suddenly have two more junior brothers. It is truly all very strange. Qin Mu replied with seriousness, in the future, you will meet us. However, today. Before he could finish his sentence, Wei Suifeng suddenly threw up his bamboo hat. The bamboo hat revolved and floated in the air before it suddenly vanished. Qin Mu raised his head to look, and the sky was filled entirely with stars that shone brilliantly overhead. Tens of thousands of beams of starlight crossed each other and crushed downwards. Star sand? No, it's the great educational heavenly devil scriptures, tens of thousands divine art. As he was thinking about it, he was drowned in countless stars. Wei Suifeng stretched his hand, and the bamboo hat returned to his hand. He said indifferently, fighting against me. To take you down will only require slight effort. Boom. The bamboo hat in his hand suddenly burst apart, and countless divine weapons filled the air. Qin Mu countered the bamboo hat, leaping into the air and laughing. Big senior brother, using teacher's abilities against me will not. Wei Suifeng's expression changed slightly. Numerous divine weapons merged together and transformed into a cauldron just before Qin Mu managed to rise up, once again absorbing Qin Mu into the cauldron to entrap him. Heaven-burying celestial river. The galaxy encircled him, and suddenly, a vast and mighty river surged as countless stars rushed into the cauldron. After the divine art was executed, it was quiet again inside the cauldron. Wei Suifeng let out a sigh of relief. I don't wish to kill you, I only want to trap and seal you. As long as you don't resist, you won't get hurt. When I'm done investigating the abyss of the ruins of End, I will then release you. Catcher. Before him, a crack suddenly formed on the huge cauldron. Wei Suifeng was startled. He watched as the various divine weapons that had formed the cauldron started to split up and float about in the air like stars. Qin Mu stood in the center of these divine weapons, breaking the connections between them. He was about to escape from within. Suddenly, Wei Suifeng's divine weapons fused together again, transforming into chains that intertwined with each other and danced about around him. Different rune imprints emerged from these chains, and they radiated dazzling rays of light. The runes imprinted themselves on the surface of Qin Mu's skin, multiplying. Teleportation runes. Qin Mu's scalp turned numb. On his arms, his legs, his head, and his chest were numerous teleportation runes that had been imprinted on him, forming 6 sets of teleportation divine art. That was to say, if these teleportation divine arts were activated, he would be split up into 6 pieces. This was the first time he had ever seen anyone use the teleportation divine art in such a manner. Before he was able to react, the rune imprints from the chains had already completed the teleportation divine arts. Wei Suifeng, D***MN your ***. Qin Mu had only just said these words when the teleportation divine arts burst out. His head suddenly vanished, his legs and arms disappeared consecutively, and finally, even his chest was teleported away. Wei Suifeng had actually used the teleportation divine art to chop him up into 6 pieces. No matter who you are, if you stand in my way, only death awaits you. Wei Suifeng raised his hand, and the chains broke apart, transforming into divine weapons and automatically gathering together behind his back. He continued indifferently, I already gave you 2 chances. He walked towards the female corpse on the ground. He was just about to bend down and inspect it when, suddenly, he had a feeling and hurriedly stood upright to look around his surroundings. He saw that Qin Mu's 4 limbs, head, and chest were flying towards each other from 6 different directions. He didn't even die from that. Wei Suifeng was extremely shocked. Qin Mu's body and 4 limbs met in mid-air, and pieced themselves together, forming a headless body. Qin Mu's body bent forward and suddenly ran, with all its might in a straight direction, each step covering several miles. The headless corporeal body was so formidable in power that it actually compressed the air several miles apart into a wall, and then it smashed apart this wall of air. When he took a single step, there was the sound of thunder rumbling behind him, and he left behind a vacuum zone that was about 10 miles in length. The corners of Wei Suifeng's eyes twitched. He waved his sleeves, and the countless divine weapons behind him collided into one another noisily, transforming into a clear mirror. The mirror wasn't aimed towards Qin Mu's headless body, it pointed towards the side. Qin Mu's head was currently flying in the air towards his body. Upon being touched by the mirror's ray, there was a huge boom, and his head was blown away to God knows where. Wei Suifeng waved his hand, and the mirror that was in front of him flew towards Qin Mu's headless corporeal body, which was dashing in its direction. The mirror's ray shot forward, and it actually reflected the image of a building. Qin Mu's headless body rushed towards it, and the mirror suddenly broke down, fusing with the image of the building. The image of the building materialized, and it fell to the ground with a loud crashing noise. The impact of Qin Mu's body dragged the building with it across the ground, causing a path of sparks and lights that burst out in all directions. The building stopped just in front of Wei Suifeng, and loud bangs could be heard from within the building. It was the sound of Qin Mu's headless corporeal body attempting to break through the building and rush out. Wei Suifeng encircled the building at great speed, his palms changing into tens of thousands of forms that he consecutively imprinted onto the bottommost level of the building. 8 extremes determines life and death. His figure rose upward, and he reached the 2nd level. His figure resembled a dragon swimming about fluidly, as he attacked the insides of the building with different divine arts. 7 stars level the skies. His figure rose to the 3rd level. 6 directions collapsing. 5 elements reversal. 4 symbols conundrum. He continuously executed his divine arts as he made his way to the uppermost level, activating every single one of the killing formations in the building. Wei Suifeng landed on the ground. Opening his arms wide apart, he made a hugging motion that caused the 8-story building to shake. The killing formations within the building rushed upwards into the sky, and the crisp sound of metal and stone colliding could be heard continuously. After a period of time, blood flowed out from within the building, dyeing the ground red. Wei Suifeng raised his hand, and the 8-story building grew smaller and smaller until it landed in his palm. What a difficult fellow to deal with. It's a pity that his realm was a little low, and that he had yet to cultivate to become a god. He threw the 8-story building upwards, and the divine building broke apart. Some shattered bones fell out from within the building as it broke up into various divine weapons that floated behind him. Suddenly, Wei Suifeng's pupils contracted. He watched as Qin Mu strode towards him. Just now, he had clearly refined Qin Mu's headless body to death within the building. So where did this Qin Mu come from? He looked down at the fragments of bone on the ground. Qin Mu had indeed been refined to death by him, yet what was with this Qin Mu that was walking towards him? Could it be the creation writings of the great educational heavenly devil scripture? Wei Suifeng was astonished, and he shook his head. It's impossible for the creation technique to grow out a body from your head. Even I didn't manage to comprehend such a profound technique of creation. When teacher Woodcutter imparted the creation technique to you, even he didn't know of the technique of creation of the Crimson Light era. Of course he was unable to impart that to you. Qin Mu raised his palm, and the sword pellet appeared. It revolved continuously, breaking apart as it turned, transforming into numerous flying swords. Qin Mu shook his head. Teacher Woodcutter was biased. He taught third junior brother for 2 years, and he taught big senior brother, Yu, for an even longer period of time. Yet, he never taught me personally. Fortunately, I found something even better. Wei Suifeng's sleeves rolled, and the divine weapons behind him started to combine again. However, at this moment, Qin Mu raised his palm and pressed forwards into the empty space. Wei Suifeng immediately saw that, behind Qin Mu, an apparition of the heavenly cycle stars had actually appeared. It transformed into a boundless galaxy, with countless stars and sparkling starlight. Divine rays of magnetism were released, and an enormous magnetic force field was formed in the middle of these stars. This sort of magnetic force field was far more formidable than the great heavenly cycle force field from the great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Boom! An extremely terrifying force suddenly attacked, and it caused all of his divine weapons to fall onto the ground. The ground sank downwards furiously, and the pressure on Wei Suifeng's body also increased exponentially in an instant. His body trembled violently, and he barely remained standing. Big senior brother, your abilities are truly formidable. You entered the path through divine arts, didn't you? Qin Mu's neck shook, and 2 more heads grew from it. Arms tunneled out from his armpits, and he laughed as he raised them up one by one. However, I come from 20,000 years in the future, your divine arts are already obsolete. Boom boom boom. Layers of great heavenly cycle force field pushed downwards. Wei Suifeng had almost reached his limits, and couldn't hold on any longer. His entire person was squashed until he was lying flat on the ground, unable to even lift his head. Luckily, the ground of the world within the flowers was very soft. Even as Qin Mu's great heavenly cycle force field crushed down on his back like great mountains, he didn't suffer any severe injuries. Teleportation formation runes suddenly appeared around him, and with a swoosh, he vanished with the divine weapons that were wrapped around him. Qin Mu dispersed the great heavenly cycle force field, his 3 heads looking about in all 4 directions. Wei Suifeng didn't reappear. At this very moment, Qin Mu felt his stomach bloating up. He was alarmed. It's the teleportation divine art again. His belly started to inflate at a terrifying speed, growing bigger and bigger as numerous divine weapons emerged within his body. Wei Suifeng had directly teleported his divine weapons into Qin Mu's chest. No wonder they call us the Heavenly Saint Cult, the Heavenly Devil Cult. Within Qin Mu's divine treasures, rays of light sparkled. The frantic emergence of the divine weapons had caused his divine treasures to continuously inflate as well. His corporeal body was also expanding furiously. Qin Mu tried his best to strengthen his corporeal body so as to stop it from being ripped apart by the divine weapons that had suddenly emerged within his body. Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique, 8 Voices of Ancestral Dragon. Qin Mu roared. The vital qi within his corporeal body surged, and the loud and clear roars of a dragon could be heard. It sounded like the chanting of the ancestral dragon, who had coiled within the formless mass when heaven and earth first split apart. The resonating dragon roars suppressed the divine weapons within his body and divine treasures. The countless divine weapons had actually been struck by the 8 voices of ancestral dragon until cracks formed on them. Under the dragon roars, the numerous divine weapons burst apart and were vibrated into the finest particles. Qin Mu roared again, and the great sun in his divine treasures suddenly burst out. Its boiling energy transformed his divine treasures into the most terrifying and hottest furnace in the world, directly refining the pieces of the divine weapons into molten iron. Qin Mu clasped his hands before his chest as he executed Sakra Buddha's glazed 8 treasures body. The melted divine weapons transformed into steam and spewed out of his pores. The divine metal steam immediately condensed into 8 treasures glaze. The 8 treasures revolved and transformed into a circular Buddha ray made of metal at the back of his head. Qin Mu leaped up and reached out his hand to strike the air. The depths of space trembled violently, and a teleportation light flashed past from the depths. An enormous palm print suddenly appeared within it, and it faced his fist head-on. Qin Mu shifted his figure, chasing after that teleportation light, his 6 arms throwing out punches like raindrops and furiously blasting towards the depths of space. He punched from the borders of this world within the flowers all the way to the top of the sky. Along this path, there were numerous fist marks that appeared in the sky, and they all connected into a straight line. Suddenly, all of the fist marks surged towards Qin Mu, transforming into a single magnificent fist. Return of 1,000 palms beyond the strange peaks of heavens. With this punch, a terrifying power emerged directly, and space was torn apart. The densely packed fist marks continuously destroyed the space, shattering into pieces the teleportation runes that surrounded Wei Suifeng, who was hiding within the space. After Qin Mu executed this great divine art, he immediately transformed his fist into a palm. Smacking the palm out, numerous teleportation runes burst out. The countless flying swords that were transformed from the sword pellet traveled through the teleportation divine art and entered the space. The sword rays disappeared completely. Qin Mu landed on the ground, and he looked up into the sky. His 6 arms clutched sword techniques that were changing continuously, and it was dazzling to the eyes. Swoosh! The sky suddenly split apart, and a ray of light burst out from the crack, landing straight onto the ground. The light retracted instantly and transformed into the figure of Wei Suifeng, who was covered in blood. He raised a hand. "Junior brother, stop." Loud clangs sounded out endlessly as numerous flying swords descended and stabbed into the ground surrounding him, transforming into a sword forest that was a hectare or so wide. All the bodies of the swords faced him. On the shining sword bodies, there were numerous teleportation runes that shone onto his body. Wei Suifeng carefully observed his surroundings, his vital qi suddenly transforming into countless mirrors that refracted the runes on the flying swords as he laughed and said, "Junior brother, you learn pretty fast." Qin Mu waved his hand, and the sword forest rushed upwards into the sky, clinking and colliding noisily as they transformed back into the sword pellet, and landed in his hands. "Big senior brother, you admit that I am your junior brother now." Although he had picked up this skill from Wei Suifeng, purely relying on the teleportation runes on the bodies of the swords wouldn't be enough to deal with Wei Suifeng. The mirrors that were formed by Wei Suifeng's vital qi refracted the teleportation runes on the flying swords. If Qin Mu activated the teleportation divine art and tried to tear Wei Suifeng into 8 pieces, then Wei Suifeng would be able to make use of the mirror surfaces to damage the teleportation divine art. When the teleportation divine art burst out, he would be safe from danger, but Qin Mu's flying swords would then be torn into pieces by the teleportation divine art. It was the first time Qin Mu had seen someone who had cultivated the great educational heavenly devil scriptures to such a level. On the transformations of divine arts, Wei Suifeng was the only one, out of all the divine arts practitioners and gods and devils that he had encountered before, who could match up with Xu Xinghua. When Xu Xinghua was still inexperienced, he was even inferior compared to Wei Suifeng. "Big senior brother, I have finally met you." Qin Mu laughed out loud, walking forward with great strides and wrapping his arms around him tightly. He spoke out with great excitement, saying, "I have been following after your footsteps to move forward in the pursuit of the truths of history." Wei Suifeng was obviously not used to this. All these years, he had gone around searching for the truths of history all by himself, so he was at a loss at Qin Mu's overly passionate behavior. He tried to break away from it, but was unsuccessful. He could only hug Qin Mu back, replying helplessly, "Junior brother, you can let go now." "Junior brother, you can really let go now. Let go of me, what's up with this female corpse? Qin Mu finally released him and smiled. This female corpse is the corpse of the sister of Celestial Empress. You left this for me. Wei Suifeng shook his head. You came from 20,000 years in the future to my era and obtained this female corpse. How could it have been left behind by me for you? The one who left this behind must be someone else. Qin Mu was a little shocked. However, in the future, you left behind this geographical map of the abyss of the ruins of End for me, marking this location on it. Upon hearing this, Wei Suifeng felt that it was all very preposterous, and yet it was reality. He could only accept it. Junior brother, I may have marked a location that meant that there was something there, but that thing may not have been left behind by me. He bent down and inspected the peachwood hairpin at the back of Celestial Empress sister's head. This woman died due to this hairpin. Could it be that the owner of this hairpin left it for you? I have encountered many peculiar events. He exerted pressure into his palm, intending to pull out the hairpin. Qin Mu sensed something in his heart and quickly cried out, "Don't remove it." However, it was too late. Wei Suifeng had already pulled out Celestial Venerable Ling's hairpin. At this very instant, a wave of fog suddenly appeared, and he was swept into it. Qin Mu hurriedly stretched out his hand to grab at Wei Suifeng, who was enshrouded in the fog, but Wei Suifeng vanished together with the fog. When Wei Suifeng's senses finally returned to him, he saw the celestial river flowing within the fog. There was a woman dressed in a leopard print skirt and straw shoes standing on the river surface while holding a lantern in her hand. "Why is it you?" The woman revealed an expression of disappointment. She shoved the lantern into his hand and took the hairpin from him, her figure disappearing into the fog. "It should have been him who returned to help me. Wei Suifeng, when you meet me again, it will be the time when you should leave. Remember, on the day the lantern extinguishes, you will be able to leave." When the fog dissipated, Wei Suifeng looked around in a daze. A magnificent celestial river was rolling towards him, and numerous flags flew from the ships that were sailing past him. "Who are you? How dare you stand in the way of Celestial Emperor's patrol?" Suddenly, a god with the head of a bird and the body of a man yelled out from one of the ships. Wei Suifeng was taken aback. "Celestial Emperor. This is... Idiot. This is the Dragon Han Celestial Heavens." The god laughed. "Men, take down this fool." Wei Suifeng hurriedly executed his divine arts and beat up some of the gods who had come forward to grab him. The eyes of the god with the head of a bird instantly lit up, and he praised, "Your abilities aren't too bad. Fellow, would you be willing to join my feathered forest guards?" Celestial Venerable Ling's hairpin was actually left for me, but in the end, it was instead removed by Big Senior Brother. Qin Mu walked briskly to the area where Wei Suifeng vanished. The hairpin had disappeared with him, and Qin Mu couldn't help but furrow his brows. When he came to the realization that the hairpin was left for him by Celestial Venerable Ling, he was already one step too late. Wei Suifeng had already replaced him to travel to the ancient times. Big Senior Brother will be in the Dragon Han era of the ancient times, residing there for an unknown period of time, and becoming the right commander of the feathered forest guards of the Dragon Han Celestial Heavens. Only after Celestial Empress ambush event and the case of the ghost ship will he return. Qin Mu put the corpse of Celestial Empress sister back into the crystal coffin, waiting quietly as he thought to himself, when he returns from the Dragon Han Celestial Heavens, he will probably still appear here. I can wait for his return. Perhaps Celestial Venerable Ling will have told him some things before he comes back here. On the other side, there was no movement in the Dark Flower world. The Dragon Chalene still hadn't returned after he went off to look for Yanga. The battle situation there was still unknown. Qin Mu guarded beside the crystal coffin. He took out his mirror and continued to organize the ancient god runes, awaiting Wei Suifeng's return. He waited there for several days, but he still didn't see the dragon Qin and Yang coming back. That was when he started to get worried and got up, deciding to go look for the two of them. He came to the border of the dark flower world, and just as he was about to stride into the darkness, he suddenly stopped in his tracks, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The world within the flowers in the abyss doesn't have a cycle where day and night interchange. However, the red flower world and dark flower world actually have day and night. He gazed towards the dark flower world that had no trace of light. Taking out a piece of jade, light twirling about his fingertips, he carved the characters, "Wait for me," onto it, and then he threw the piece of jade into the dark flower world. He watched as the piece of jade landed in the dark flower world and then suddenly vanished in the blink of an eye, without even the sound of it landing on the ground. This type of disappearance was the complete disappearance from this era. The red flower world belongs to the day, the dark flower world belongs to the night. Walking from day to night, the time travel will then cease, and one will return to the original generation. Fatty Dragon and Sister Yang have both returned to the era that we came from, but since I didn't enter the darkness, I remained here in Big Senior Brother's era. Qin Mu retracted his steps and continued to sit beside the crystal coffin. As long as he didn't step into the dark flower world, he wouldn't return to the era he was in when they first arrived at the ruins of End. However, just to be on the safe side, he still took the lead in sorting out Great Sun Sovereign's Great Dao runes, forming a sun with his vital qi, and hanging it in the skies of the world within the flowers. The days passed by one after the other, and Qin Mu had already recalculated the runes of the star gods of the ancient gods, Great Dao runes, using the computational canon of Supreme Molecule. The beard on his face was also growing sturdier. The time he had spent in this era was already much longer than the time he had stayed in the Dragon Han era. During this period of time, there were a few more damaged planets that fell into the abyss, causing the undercurrents to spew out and the flowers of the abyss to bloom open. However, this place seemed to be completely deserted, so no one had entered it. On this day, he was fully absorbed in his research and deduction, paying absolutely no attention to anything else. At this time, the female corpse within the crystal coffin had gradually opened her eyes. The female corpse turned her head soundlessly, inspecting Qin Mu in secret. The wound on the back of the head of this female corpse had actually unknowingly healed over the past few months. Qin Mu suddenly sensed something, and he turned his head around to look. The female corpse remained still in her coffin, looking no different from how she was previously. Strange, I clearly sensed a gaze looking at me. Qin Mu shook his head, continuing his research. However, he positioned his mirror upright, shining towards the crystal coffin behind him. He controlled the calculation spirit weapons and calculated non-stop, intensively studying those runes until he was oblivious to his surroundings. After a long period of time, the female corpse within the coffin opened her eyes again. The female corpse was lying in the coffin, yet at this moment, her head had twisted in his direction quietly. It was twisted at an alarming angle, and a sinister gaze landed on Qin Mu's back. The lid of the crystal coffin flew up soundlessly, and the female corpse also floated upwards, just as quietly. Qin Mu was in the middle of calculating, but the corners of his eyes suddenly twitched. Behind his back, the female corpse had quietly floated down. Her body floated in mid-air, as her beautiful head hung downwards, and her hair flowed down by her snow-white neck like a waterfall. Her head was gradually getting closer to Qin Mu's neck. Qin Mu still didn't seem to notice anything, yet there were beads of sweat rolling off his forehead. The sword pellet within his Daotai sack at his waist seemed to have turned into mercury, and was gradually flowing out, quietly reaching the back of the female corpse's head. It slowly transformed into a sword tip to point at the wound on her head that had just healed not too long ago. At this very moment, light swirled about ahead, and a middle-aged man, who was only dressed in a white blouse and white pants, walked out from the light. The middle-aged man looked dignified, and as soon as he appeared, he immediately saw the female corpse floating behind Qin Mu. He glared in anger with widened eyes, and one by one, divine treasures leaped out from behind him. There was a loud rumbling, and a celestial palace appeared above the many divine treasures. Within the celestial palace, there were apparitions of gods and devils atop the many palaces of varying sizes. They stood high up in great numbers, resembling a river of stars that appeared above the celestial palace. His primordial spirit was like an ancient god that wielded the boundless power of the galaxy. He appeared in the numinous sky hall before the emperor's throne, reaching out a palm, which broke through the celestial palace with a loud rumble and attacked the female corpse behind Qin Mu. Mistress Yuan Mu, since you are already dead, then why must you still try to cause trouble? Upon hearing him call out her real name, the female corpse behind Qin Mu let out a shrill whistling sound as her drooping hair flew up. Instantly, the ruins of End Great Tao within her body seemed to have been revived, and the dark undercurrents within the dark flower world started to surge in their direction. Qin Mu immediately sensed an immense pressure. It was the power of the ancient gods awakening within the body of the female corpse. It was as though the horrifying power that could swallow up all living beings in the world had burst out behind him. However, the middle-aged man's primordial spirit pressed a palm onto her forehead, his power exploding and forcing the surging darkness behind her back into the dark flower world. The female corpse fell backwards involuntarily and landed in the crystal coffin with a bang. The crystal coffin closed, trapping the female corpse within it. The female corpse struggled about in the coffin, screeching out loud, and her pretty face was now sinister looking. However, she still wasn't able to break out of the middle-aged man's entrapment. The middle-aged man walked towards Qin Mu, bowing to greet him. Second junior brother, it has been 8,000 years since we said our goodbyes. Having not seen you for 8,000 years, you have grown a beard. Mistress Yuan Mu, have you reanimated? The female corpse was like a fish out of water, flopping about ceaselessly in the coffin. Qin Mu returned his greetings, and he smiled. The longing for an old friend made me forget about my beard. Senior brother, you left for 8,000 years, yet I have been here for no more than 6 months. The letter you wrote in the fog, I have already seen it on the ghost ship. Big senior brother, have you found your path of the saint? This middle-aged man was indeed Wei Suifeng. Upon hearing what he said, he burst out laughing with high spirits. Generally speaking, I did. However, I couldn't achieve it in the Dragon Han era. I have to return to my own era to achieve it. Sacred teacher said before that one must fulfill 3 things to become a saint. The only thing I'm missing is establishing merit. Qin Mu couldn't help himself. Senior brother, fulfilling 3 things to become a saint was merely a joke by teacher. It must not be taken seriously. Although I don't know what you want to do, teacher told me that you have already walked off the right path. If you continue your search, it will be truly dangerous. In my era, I haven't even seen you. Wei Suifeng was taken aback, then he smiled. The words of sacred teacher wouldn't be wrong. My entire life has revolved around the fulfillment of the 3 requirements to become a saint. The saint I want to be is one that teacher wasn't able to achieve in his entire lifetime. He assisted founding emperor, and didn't build up the achievements that he wanted for himself, and thus his Tao heart is ultimately imperfect. Junior brother, I want to be a saint that surpasses teacher, and completely resolves the tragic fates of the people. You don't have to persuade me anymore, my mind is set on it. Qin Mu didn't say another word. Wei Suifeng smiled. You once said that you followed the geographical map that I left behind for you and found this place. If I hadn't left the map for you, wouldn't you then not be able to find this place? To me, Me giving you the geographical map is a thing of the future. To you, it's a thing of the past. Then, if in my future I don't give you the geographical map, would it be able to change the future? Qin Mu was silent for a while. Big senior brother, in my era, I have never met you. The geographical map was shown to me through your divine weapon. I don't even know if the you at that time was alive or dead. Wei Suifeng laughed out loud. I was definitely still alive, you can be assured of it. Us senior and junior brothers can still reunite, with 20,000 years between us, it's truly wondrous. I have a way to let you stay in this era. What about this? Both of us can go to the outside world together to search for the truths of history, and achieve the meritorious exploits that even teacher didn't manage to achieve. Now I have sufficient power, I won't have to be as cautious as I was before. Qin Mu shook his head. I have to go back, I won't stay here. Wei Suifeng furrowed his brows. Why are you so stubborn? He suddenly laughed. It seems that I am also stubborn. Oh, when I was returning here, I met Celestial Venerable Ling in the fog, and she asked me to pass this to you. He took out a peachwood hairpin, his gaze flickered, and he smiled. This hairpin is a precious artifact of Celestial Venerable Ling. She seemed to have been trapped within the Celestial River. She gave the hairpin to me and entrusted me to hand it over to you. Could you lend it to me to use? Qin Mu was waiting for this, and he raised a hand to grasp at the hairpin. Wei Suifeng moved his hand and gripped the hairpin in his palm. Junior brother, let me borrow this hairpin to use for some time. Qin Mu raged, stretching out his palm. Give it to me. The last time, when Celestial Venerable Ling stuck the hairpin in the back of Mistress Yuanmu's head, it was left behind for me, but it was grabbed off by you. Wei Suifeng hurriedly replied, I really need this hairpin. Junior brother, in the future, I will return it to you. I will put it here in the ruins of End, rest assured, let me borrow it. Qin Mu intended to snatch it, yet at this moment, the undercurrent of the ruins of End burst out. Wei Suifeng dashed upwards into the sky, flying out when the flower blossomed, laughing. Rest assured, in the future, I will put the hairpin here. Wei Suifeng, D***mn your ***. Wei Suifeng vanished, laughing. When you return to your own era, go to the palace and search for the hairpin. I will leave a geographical map behind for you. Qin Mu was stunned. After some time, the spewing undercurrent came to a stop. Qin Mu returned to his senses and immediately carried the crystal coffin and walked towards the dark flower world. Within the crystal coffin, the corpse of Mistress Yuanmu giggled, looking on expectantly as the dark flower world was getting closer and closer to her. Although she was a product of reanimation, the dark flower world was ultimately where she was born, and it was very attractive to her. Furthermore, as long as she entered the dark flower world, she would be able to direct the great Tao of the dark flower world to break through Wei Suifeng's seal and this crystal coffin. Qin Mu stood before the dark flower world. Putting down the crystal coffin, he removed the willow leaf on the heart of his brows and said loudly, Heaven Duke, help me look after this female corpse, don't let brother eat her. With that, he shoved the crystal coffin into the Qin word land. The female corpse flew into a rage. Qin Mu was unmoved, and he leaped into the dark flower world, vanishing in the darkness. When his figure landed on the ground, and he opened his eyes, he saw that he was situated within the dark flower world. He could hear the dragon Chilene's voice coming from the red flower world. He was chiding Yanga. Told you not to eat it like that, don't eat it like that. Yet you still ate it. Let's see how you are going to answer to Cult Master. Qin Mu hurriedly rushed towards the two palaces that existed where the two worlds met. The dragon Chilene spotted him and was equal parts surprised and elated, and he called out loudly, Cult Master, we received the piece of jade that you carved, and we stayed here the whole time. Sister Yanga has eaten up the snake bell, and now she is. Shut up. Yanga's voice rang out. Qin Mu could indistinctly see a round green sparrow standing on the dragon Chilean's head. He couldn't be bothered to look closer, as he immediately rushed into the dark palace, searching furiously within the palace. Suddenly, his gaze landed on an offering table in the dark palace. Surrounding the offering table was flying stars and that transformed into a river of stars. Qin Mu grumbled angrily, again. He calculated with great speed, deciphering where the loophole of the galaxy formation was, and he immediately barged into the formation. He reached out his hand to grab at the red cloth on the offering table. Beneath the red cloth was a single peachwood hairpin. There was also a piece of goatskin parchment, with a line of words written on it beneath the hairpin. Qin Mu sighed out in relief, and couldn't bother looking at the writing on the parchment. He quickly grabbed the peachwood hairpin and thought to himself, at least Big Senior Brother is still a man of his words. But, what was with that round green sparrow just now? At this moment, his gaze landed on the goatskin parchment. The writings on it were the handwriting of Wei Suifeng, and there were only 6 words on it: follow the map and save me. Not going to save. Qin Mu threw the parchment on the ground and stomped on it twice, before digging into it with the tip of his foot. He sneered and said, save you Maya ***. If you're so capable of not listening to anyone, you can save yourself. He turned around and wanted to leave, but after some thought, he still picked up the parchment and dusted the dirt off. He stuffed it into his Daotai sack and grumbled resentfully, you ask me to save you, so at least tell me where you are trapped. How am I supposed to save you when you aren't clear? He walked out of the Black Palace, and came to the Red Flower World. The dragon Chilean hurriedly welcomed him and looked around. Cult Master, where is the female corpse? She was reanimated earlier, so I threw her in to let older brother take care of her. Qin Mu examined the green sparrow on the dragon Chilean's head, and saw that the originally cute and small bird had swelled up as though air was pumped into her. Even though she was slightly chubby now, she was still very cute. Young master, I'm Yanga, said the round and bulging green sparrow. Qin Mu said with a smile, Sister Yanga, of course I would recognize you. Have you finished eating the snake bell? He looked at the red flower world and saw that the thick and straight stamens had all vanished without a trace. They had all been cleanly plucked. Is an ancient god hard to digest? The taste of this big worm was extremely good. The round and bulging green sparrow's voice was clear and a little embarrassed. It took me a long time to finish eating. I forgot to leave some for you to try. Fatty Dragon wasn't willing to eat, so I finished it. Qin Mu stared with his eyes wide open. She had finished it. The snake bell was born from the stamens in the world of flowers, and the stamens were like pillars that stood between heaven and earth, yet they were all finished by her. The dragon Chilean retorted softly, I'm not fat at all, on the other hand. The green sparrow pecked his head loudly, and the dragon Chilean winced in pain. He hurriedly shut his mouth. Qin Mu looked out of the sky, and the seal of the red flower world was still in a sealed state. They should still be in the abyss, and they would have to wait for the undercurrent to have a chance to leave. He took out the geographical maps and spread all of them out. These geographical maps were left behind by Wei Suifeng in the valley outside the parameter arc, and he had already been to some of the maps. For example, using the map of Dragon Village, he had received the commander token of the Feathered Forest Guards from Elder Qing Huang. Using the map of the Abnormal Star, he met God Kai Shi on the God Execution stage, and received the God Execution Mysterious Knife. And in Supreme Brightness Heaven's Desolate City, he met the strongest God Brain Ying Jiao, receiving the blueprints of the Parameter Arc as well. In the Abyss of the Ruins of End, he received Celestial Venerable Ling's Peachwood Hairpin. Actually, it was big senior brother Wei Suifeng's geographical maps that had led him here step by step. Qin Mu placed the past geographical maps aside and observed the other geographical maps. He tried to find where Wei Suifeng was trapped. At the side, Yang was muttering to the dragon Qilin. Young master said that the female corpse was being taken care of by his older brother. Young master still has an older brother. Why have I not met him before? The dragon Qilin glanced at Qin Mu and raised a claw to point at his head. He lowered his voice and said, Cult Master's older brother is actually Cult Master himself. Cult Master has always imagined that he has a very powerful and vicious old brother. Don't expose him. Yang raised her wings and stroked her little head with the tips of her wings. She gasped in disbelief. What you mean is that Cult Master is? The dragon Qilin nodded his head. Yang looked at Qin Mu, who was currently studying the geographical maps, and her gaze was filled with sympathy. Young master is too lonely, that is why he's having those hallucinations. Qin Mu studied the maps for a long time, and these geographical maps were all very unfamiliar to him. He couldn't tell where Wei Suifeng was trapped, and he had no way to find out. In the past, Saint Woodcutter seemed to recognize numerous geographical maps when I showed them to him. We might be able to go look for him. He would definitely put in more effort towards finding his big disciple. Qin Mu put away the geographical maps and took out Celestial Venerable Ling's peachwood hairpin. Celestial Venerable Ling's hairpin was the simplest and most ordinary peachwood hairpin, and there was nothing unique about it. It was also not imprinted with any runes. Qin Mu examined it in detail, and he couldn't find any divine art or great Tao hidden inside. He gently exerted force, and the hairpin started to bend as though it could break at any moment. Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art is also not inside this hairpin. How could the item of a Celestial Venerable be so ordinary? Qin Mu tried to execute his magic power, and poured his vital qi into the peachwood hairpin, yet there was still no transformation. However, he could feel an extremely powerful and strange power hidden inside the hairpin. His heart stirred slightly, and he executed the art of creation. He saw spring returning to the red-colored hairpin, and it quickly sprouted in his hand. Not long later, it transformed into a peach tree. The peach tree bloomed and bore fruit, and soon, the peaches ripened. Qin Mu plucked a peach, and removed the peach skin. He took a bite, and it was very sweet. However, I didn't manage to activate this power. It might require an even more profound creation technique. Suddenly, a light flashed from the peach tree, and it vanished, transforming back into a hairpin, which landed beside him. Unchanging substance. Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly, and he picked up the hairpin. He had used a creation divine art to change the structure of the hairpin's substance and allowed it to grow. Then, a strange power inside the hairpin had caused it to revert back to its original state. This was exactly the characteristic of an unchanging substance. Not only did the peach tree transform back into a hairpin, Qin Mu even saw the peach pit, and the peach he had eaten earlier vanishing at this very moment. They returned back to their original substance. This hairpin has already become an unchanging substance that won't change for eternity. No matter what I do to it, it can never be damaged. Qin Mu executed his creation divine art once more, and suddenly, an overflowing flood majestically poured out from the hairpin, and formed a suspended celestial river that was incomparably heavy. When the celestial river impacted, even the world and the flower swayed indeterminately. Not far away, the dragon Qilin and Yang didn't have stable footing and got struck by the celestial river. In the next instant, they were blown to the borders of the world and the flower and collided with the flower wall. The pressure of the celestial river was too strong, and the dragon Qilin couldn't withstand it. He was nearly crushed, and Yang hurriedly spread open her wings to protect him. Suddenly, the celestial river stopped and vanished. All of the river water vanished without a trace, as though it had never appeared. The only thing left was Qin Mu examining the peachwood hairpin curiously and muttering to himself. The dragon Qilin and Yang fell down from the flower wall on the horizon. As they were trying to figure out what happened, the celestial river appeared and blasted them up against the flower wall once again. Yang protected the dragon Qilin once more, and she felt the pressure growing stronger and stronger. Suddenly, the celestial river vanished once again, and both of them fell to the ground. Yang gave a delicate shout, and shook her body to transform into a dragon sparrow. Her body size was enormous and chubby. She raised her two huge wings to block in front of her, as she looked warily at her surroundings. Suddenly, the celestial river came attacking once more, nearly extinguishing the vermilion bird's sacred flames on her body. Once again, they were smashed into the flower wall on the horizon. Strange, where is the water coming from? Qin Mu tested it once more, tormenting Yang and the dragon Qilin beyond life and death. And in the ruins of the High Emperor Celestial Heavens, which was in Fallen God Valley, blind elder Yi Shisheng was currently fishing out Celestial Venerable Ling's corpse. He had already been there for over 40,000 years. Suddenly, this blind elder revealed an astonished look, and he muttered to himself, "The water of the celestial river has become shallow. The water of the celestial river has never lessened before, why would it do so now?" He became agitated. Could teacher be about to break free? Is she going to be free from endless death? After a moment, the water of the celestial river returned back to its original water level. Yi Shisheng was stunned. After a moment, the water in the celestial river was reduced once again, and returned back to normal before being reduced again. Yi Shisheng stood beside the celestial river, and he was completely bewildered. He didn't know what was happening. In the world of flowers inside the abyss of the ruins of End, Qin Mu finally stopped his experiments and scratched his head. He muttered to himself, saying, "The power of the hairpin is powerful enough, yet this isn't the reason Celestial Venerable Ling handed this hairpin to me. She wouldn't have given me this treasure without reason. However, what should I do to execute the true power of this hairpin? Unchanging substance, unchanging substance." He walked to and fro while pondering hard, and suddenly, his eyes lit up. He said urgently, "What if I use Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art to activate this hairpin? What would happen? When an unchanging substance meets the unchanging divine art, there is bound to be some other transformation." He had deduced Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art on the ghost ship, and acquired considerable learning. However, he was still far from recreating Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art. And at that point, Celestial Venerable Ling had only finished the fledgling stage of her divine art. So one could imagine how complicated Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art of unchanging substance was. Qin Mu grabbed the peachwood hairpin, and tried to execute the incomplete divine art that Celestial Venerable Ling had created. Yang and the dragon Qilin saw him grabbing the hairpin once again, and their scalps crawled. They hurriedly went into hiding. The celestial river appeared once again, but it wasn't as terrifying as it was before. A section of the celestial river's surface appeared in the sky, and it seemed to be extremely far from them. There were layers of fog on the celestial river, and a woman wearing a leopard fur skirt and grass shoes could be faintly seen standing in the fog. "Celestial Venerable Ling!" Qin Mu shouted loudly. The woman in the leopard fur skirt and grass shoes seemed to hear his voice and turned around. The astonishment on her face turned into a smile. She opened her mouth and wanted to speak, when an incomparably gigantic shadow appeared in the fog behind her. Qin Mu's expression changed drastically. "Be careful, behind you." A beam of light appeared and pierced through Celestial Venerable Ling's chest. She was then lifted up and smashed into the celestial river. Qin Mu froze on the spot, and a chill spread throughout his body. In the celestial river, Celestial Venerable Ling's face was still facing him, and it was a long spear that had pierced through her body. The spear was in the hand of that gigantic shadow. The smile on her face didn't fade away, and her voice faintly traveled over. "Save me." That shadow in the fog closed in and seemed to want to break out from the restraints of Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art. He rushed at Qin Mu and wanted to break free from the endless cycles. "Who exactly are you?" Qin Mu shouted loudly, "Show me your face." That figure rushed to the front section of the Celestial River and leaped, trying to jump out. However, at this moment, the Celestial River went into turmoil. He and Celestial Venerable Ling were swept away and vanished. Qin Mu was stunned. He raised the peachwood hairpin and executed the divine art once again. The broken section of the Celestial River appeared once more, and the scene repeated itself in front of him. Celestial Venerable Ling was killed once again, and that shadow in the fog rushed out of the broken section, only to be swept back into Celestial Venerable Ling's unchanging divine art once more. However, he was much closer to the broken section this time, so Qin Mu could faintly see his face. However, it wasn't too clear. This figure was trapped by Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art, and could never jump out of the Celestial River. He couldn't jump out of the cycle. "Young master, the undercurrent of the abyss is spewing out." Yang's cries rang out to wake Qin Mu up. "The world in the flower is rising, we should be leaving here now." Qin Mu ignored her and executed the divine art once again. The world in the flower was rising, and the sky split apart. The twin lotuses were about to bloom. In front of him, the torrential current of the Celestial River surged up violently, as the scene of the gigantic shadow killing Celestial Venerable Ling appeared once more. The shadow shrouded the heaven and earth as he rushed at the broken section again, heading straight for Qin Mu. The world in the flower had bloomed completely, and outside was the ruins of End. The dark Celestial River hung in the sky, frozen. With one red lotus and one black lotus in the river, everything seemed extremely tranquil. Yang and the Dragon Qilin looked at Qin Mu anxiously, and the Dragon Qilin cried out and said, "Cult Master, if we don't go out, I don't know how long we will have to wait for the next undercurrent to spout." Finally, that huge shadow in the Celestial River rushed to Qin Mu's face, and his face collided mercilessly with an invisible barrier. He still couldn't rush out of Celestial Venerable Ling's unchanging divine art. He let out a furious roar, and was swept away by the Celestial River again, falling into the next cycle. Qin Mu looked at that face in a daze. This time, he had finally seen the face of the owner. Yang rushed over and transformed into a big fat bird that caught him and the Dragon Qilin, before flying towards the sky that was about to close. Finally, she managed to rush out of the world in the flower before the twin lotuses closed. On the outside, the dark Celestial River started to flow back, and the speed of the flow was becoming faster and faster. The attraction force of the abyss was also becoming stronger and stronger. Yang exerted all her strength and transformed her primordial spirit into a dragon sparrow, as she fought against the force of attraction and pressure, flapping her wings to fly out. Boom! She crashed into Celestial Empress Side Palace, and knocked down countless palaces and corridors, before finally coming to a stop. Part 353 and 354 end here. Thank you for watching.